One aspect that I've always loved about shonen anime and manga is how hilariously broken characters become when the story is entering its endgame, and even beyond that endgame phase. With series like Dragon Ball, you have characters who go beyond godly levels of power, and God knows what the hell is going on in Boruto. In almost all shonen series, power levels eventually become unquantifiable. Thankfully, with Bleach, I feel like the issue of power creep was handled much better. Hopefully, I'll be able to prove this by explaining the powerhouse that is Hikone Ubuginu. This, of course, is the immensely powerful hybrid being who is one of the villains of the Can't Fear Unworld light novel series. Hikone has grown to become a controversial figure within the Bleach community, with power scaling fans engaging in massive arguments all because of this character. Hopefully by the end of this video you'll know exactly how powerful Hikone is. So without further delay, here is my complete video breaking down and analyzing the insane powers of Hikone. Discover the Undead Collection and be amongst the very first to join us on our journey over at getsuga.com. To truly understand Hikone's power, we'll first have to begin by examining their origins. The origins of power for hybrid beings like Hikone and Ichigo can be somewhat confusing, but by understanding their history and often their genetic makeup, it justifies the absurd levels of power that they later demonstrate within the series. To understand Hikone, we'll have to travel back to an unspecified time before the 1000-year Blood War arc had started. To be specific, it was slightly before the very first Quincy invasion. This is where we learn that Tokinada Tsunayashiro had wanted to create a possible replacement for the Soul King. His intention was to create a hybrid being who could rival or even surpass Ichigo in power. Tokinada had told Zenosuke Yamada and Ora Michibane to create this hybrid being. You could say that the two of them were more than a perfect team for this assignment. Ora Michibane's ability to manipulate matter had made it easy to change all of the reishi and the assortment of ingredients which were needed to create Hikone. This was combined with Zenosuke's immense mastery of Kaido, which had made it so that they could always fix any possible mistakes and make sure that all of Hikone's bodily systems were fully functional. Despite this great pairing, it still wasn't enough to make Hikone a fully functional being. The first version of Hikone was pretty much brain dead. We learned that Hikone's body was made up of multiple different soul shards, including shards from the souls of Shinigami, Quincy, Fullbringers, humans, and even hollows. In addition to this, there were also fragments of the Soul King within Hikone's body. This meant that Hikone would end up becoming a being who possesses all of the traits of the major Bleach races. The reason why Hikone existed without succumbing to soul suicide is explained by Urahara. This is when he uses Isshin's Shinigami powers in combination with a special Gigai in order to save the life of Masaki Kurosaki. Every type of soul within the Bleach universe has another soul that counters its harmful properties. And since Hikone is an all-in-one special creation, soul suicide is thus prevented because all of the soul shards within his body cancel each other out. So with Hikone brain dead, Tokinada had the idea to swap out his brain for Gremmy's brain. Gremmy's brain proved to be the perfect central processing unit to the complex fused mess that was Hikone's body. This was because Gremmy's brain was very used to extremely complicated processes. Gremmy's brain had the ability to create and maintain several different things that Grammy would imagine at the same time. Some have gone on to theorize that Grammy was in possession of the brain of the Soul King, but this isn't confirmed. So after gaining Grammy's brain, Hikone was finally able to become a fully functional soul. Tokinada then proceeded to train and prepare Hikone for his upcoming plans. But even after this, Hikone was still lacking one final weapon, which Tokinada had needed to give to them. During the second Quincy invasion, when the barriers between the Royal Palace and the Soul Society were breached, it seems as though Yhwach and Ichigo's group weren't the only ones who had ascended to the Royal Palace, because by some unknown means, Tokinada had ascended also to the Royal Palace, and during the chaos, he was able to steal a particularly powerful Zanpakuto called Ikomikidomoe. This Zanpakuto is the literal body of a primordial hollow who had existed long before even Zanpakuto themselves were created. This hollow was captured by Uetsu Nimaya and Ichibe after it had laid waste to the Shinigami centuries ago. Ikomikidomoe was also stated to have defeated a young Yamamoto who had yet to receive his Zanpakuto at the time. The hollow's name was then changed by Ichibe, and I'm guessing into a much more controllable form which Nimaya could forge into a Zanpakuto. The Zanpakuto Ikomikidomoe can only be wielded by hybrid beings like Ichigo or Hikone. So Tokinada had given this Zanpakuto to Hikone, and thus further amplifying Hikone's potential power. You can already begin to imagine why Hikone is such a powerhouse. From their extremely rich genetic makeup, a brain that is designed to be able to regulate those genetics, and a ridiculously powerful Zanpakuto which houses an ancient malevolent hollow, Hikone pretty much has all of the perks that you can imagine. It's one thing to have insane potential power, it's another to put all of this together into practice. To understand the full nature and scale of Hikone's powers, we'll now have to break down each of the respective power pools that they have access to, as well as the plethora of abilities that Hikone will be able to utilize. Starting with Hikone's fundamental source of power, which is the abilities that they possess as a Shinigami. Hikone had trained in almost all of the Shinigami combat arts like Zanjutsu, Hakuda, and Shumpo. Hikone proves to be a worthy combatant when he goes up against multiple different skilled assassins, and he defeats the group effortlessly. Later, Hikone goes up against a team of Grimmjow, Haribel, Nell, Lil Toto, Giselle, and the zombified Bambietta all at once. Hikone holds their own against opponents who they should have no business fighting due to the sheer experience and skill gap between them. Hikone holds out for quite a while against them before being finally overwhelmed. This is nowhere near to the limit of their power, because the next time that we see them fight, they go up against none other than Kinpachi Zaraki himself. Hikone not only survives this fight, but actually keeps up with Kinpachi for quite some time before Hisagi arrives to intervene. There's no reason to assume that Kinpachi was holding back during the fight, because his eye patch was also removed. This is a massive feat which very few Bleach characters can replicate. Now this doesn't mean that Hikone doesn't have room for improvement, because during their battle against Hisagi, he notes multiple flaws in Hikone's fighting stance and form. He says that it makes sense because Hikone has probably never had a good teacher in comparison to characters like Ichigo who have been trained by the likes of Urahara, Hollow Ichigo, and even Ichibe. Let's now turn our attention towards Hikone's mastery of other Shinigami combat arts like Hakuda, Kido, and Shumpo. In terms of Kido expertise, Hikone shows no real degree of this during any of the fights that he takes part in, but we can confirm that Hikone has mastery over Shumpo, which is one of the most impressive aspects of their power set. Hikone can not only move extremely fast with their flash step, but they can also travel impressive distances by merging Shumpo, Hairenhyaku, Sonido, and Bringer's Light in order to move at speeds where even time slows to a crawl. Aside from when Hikone is using Ikomikidomoe, they mostly like to fight barehanded. When it comes to Hakuda, Hikone does not have the level of mastery that characters like Yoruichi and Soifon have, with their ability to seamlessly merge hand-to-hand combat with their Shunko. Despite this, Hikone is still very immensely skilled at Hakuda, even to the point of being able to effortlessly defeat Hisagi with a few barehanded strikes. This feat of Hikone's is far more impressive when you consider the fact that Hisagi isn't too far behind top-tier vice captains like Ikaku and Renji, who are considered to be Zanjutsu masters. Hikone also exhibits Hakuda skills in the early parts of their battle against Kinpachi, where they go blow for blow with Kinpachi, who had already taken off his eye patch. Hikone was able to wound Kinpachi's body with their bare-handed slashes, which are even stated within Can't Fear Your Own World to be far more deadly than most Zanpakuto slashes. Hikone also has the power to merge multiple other abilities with their Hakuda in order to further enhance its lethality. So despite going over Hikone's Shinigami powers, I haven't really mentioned their Zanpakuto abilities. This is because they don't really have a traditional Zanpakuto like most Shinigami. Their Zanpakuto is the furthest thing from a Shinigami's to begin with. This is why I've classified Ikomikidomoe under Hikone's hollow powers. Similar to Ichigo, Hikone also possesses hollow powers. They exhibit similar levels of enhanced physical capabilities that most Shinigami hollow hybrids possess, as well as a limited degree of high-speed regeneration. I say limited because Hikone could only regenerate bits of skin that Bambietta's bombs had exploded, but then on the other hand, the high-speed regeneration did not kick in against the injuries that were inflicted by Kinpachi's sword slashes. Hikone has no problem in using other hollow techniques like Seros and Iron Skin. They often use these as a means of boosting their Hakuda strikes. This proves to be quite the devastating combination which allows Hikone's bare-handed strikes to pierce and even wound Kinpachi's body. They can also use Desco Rare, which creates a Garganta, thus enabling them to traverse through dimensions. Hikone Hikone doesn't however possess an ability to holofy of their own accord, which could possibly be attributed to them not having a Zanpakuto of their own. The Zanpakuto Ikomikidomoe grants Hikone a resurrection called Horaku Hake. This Zanpakuto sword release grants Hikone an immense power boost, one that had forced a Kinpachi without an eye patch to activate his Shikai. In addition to all of this, Hikone also has access to Quincy powers. Hikone has all of the basic Quincy abilities, including Blood Vein and Blood Artery. They can also create holy bows and holy arrows, and their arrows were stated to be capable of instantly killing the surviving Quincy with a single shot. So a single holy arrow from Hikone in their base form has enough power to obliterate Giselle, Lil Toto, Candice, Meninas, and even zombified Bambietta. This combined with their immense spiritual pressure reserves makes it so that Hikone can fire these life-ending shots indefinitely. Hikone can also mix arrows into these holy arrows as if they weren't broken enough as is. And then with Blood Artery and Blood Vein, it insanely enhances Hikone's physical abilities. As a hybrid being, Hikone's character exhibits a high level of creativity and flexibility when it comes to their power. This is something that we rarely see from the Vizards or even Ichigo from the Bleach manga. Now moving on to the Fullbring powers that are exhibited by Hikone. Unfortunately, these aren't anywhere near as developed as the other powers exhibited by Hikone, because they only use Bringer's Light in combination with their other traversal techniques in order to further boost their speed. Hikone probably doesn't use much of their Fullbring powers because of a lack of training, but when you consider the fact that Hikone already has Shinigami, Quincy, and Hollow powers, I don't think having mastery over their Fullbring powers would have made much of a difference to their already insane potential. Individuals like Ichigo and Hikone possess the highest imaginable potential within Bleach. They can grow exponentially more powerful over the course of a few fights, and they can ascend to some insane heights if given enough time. For example, Ichigo jumps through multiple power tiers over the course of a single story arc, and it's crazy how he goes from being a little above an unseated Shinigami all the way to a captain level all over the course of the Soul Society arc. And this was with Odoman Zangetsu nerfing most of Ichigo's powers. The same could easily be said for Hikone, who makes massive power jumps throughout the story and is even able to put up a fight against Shikai Kinpachi, who is undeniably stronger than what he was when he had first fought against Grammy. Hikone goes so strong from the start of Can't For Your Own World that they go from struggling against the surviving Arrancar and Quincy to keeping up with Shikai Kinpachi. It is even stated that at the level of power that they had grown to, it would take nothing short of the most powerful characters in Bleach to defeat Hikone. Individuals who wouldn't really struggle with Hikone appear to be characters like Ichigo, Aizen, and even Kinpachi. Hikone is a perfect hybrid being like Ichigo, and despite being cooked up in a lab like a science project, it doesn't seem to affect Hikone negatively in any way. In comparison to how Ichigo was limited and nerfed from the very beginning, I feel like Hikone is benefited by the way that he was created, as he was born unhindered. Hikone exhibits that they can utilize their power in more flexible ways than we've ever seen with Ichigo. Hikone benefits massively from their genetic makeup, and this is thanks to the fact that they are a possible Soul King candidate. This raises Hikone's ceiling of power to incomprehensible heights. Because Hikone is a perfect hybrid being like Ichigo, it gives them a higher potential power cap than the likes of other hybrid beings like Ginjo Kugo. So Hikone's potential power is absurdly high, and when combined with how rapidly their power growth is, as well as the creative and flexible ways in which they can utilize their power, it's clear that Hikone would have grown to become quite the powerhouse if only we got to see more of them. So we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you guys think about Hikone's unbelievably insane levels of power? Definitely let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. If I've forgotten to mention anything about Hikone's powers, then let me know. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.